Mr. Secretary, we are now confronted with a situation in which hurricane season has arrived and the well remains uncapped. Mr. Secretary, not only does BP's oil spill response plan for the Gulf of Mexico not adequately prepare for the event of a hurricane if there was a spill, it does not contain the word hurricane. Mr. Secretary, I sent a letter to the BP today asking what preparations they had made for a hurricane in the spill response area. It is clear that BP wasn't prepared for this kind of a double whammy, a hurricane on top of an oil spill. We do know in the BP response plan that they are prepared to evacuate walruses from the Gulf of Mexico, even though no walrus has lived there in the last 3 million years. At the same time, BP did not mention the word hurricane in their response plan. Do you believe, Mr. Secretary, that not just BP but every oil company has a responsibility to actually have, as part of their spill response capability, the ability to deal with a hurricane?
I do. The answer is yes.
Have you talked to them right now about the level of preparation they have for a hurricane?
Yeah, we have been approached by all the major companies that have any significant ongoing activity in the Gulf of Mexico with a request that the moratorium that we have in place be lifted. You know, one of the questions that I asked these companies, and they were all the executives of these companies, was do you believe that there is a capability right now to respond to another oil spill if one were to occur in the Gulf of Mexico? And those are the kinds of questions that need to be asked, and they need to be answered before there is any lifting of the moratorium.
Well, I have introduced legislation to require oil companies to have real safety response plans that don't plan on protecting walruses in the Gulf and don't plan on it always being sunny, 75 degrees without a breeze going through the Gulf, because unfortunately, and we're seeing it right now, as this hurricane at the beginning of the season descends upon the Gulf, there could be catastrophic consequences as a hurricane hits an oil spill. And finally, Mr. Secretary, BP's CEO Tony Hayward has said that BP did not have the tools in its toolkit to respond to this type of disaster. What's worse, the CEOs of Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Shell all said that their companies would not have been able to respond any better. Mr. Secretary, would you agree that there needs to be a research program to develop 21st century oil safety and spill response technologies to ensure that if oil companies are going to drill ultra deep, then the technologies are there to make it ultra safe, and if an accident does occur, that the technologies can respond ultra fast to that spill?
Congressman Markey, yes, I do believe that, and let me, if I may, just add a comment to that, and that is that in what really has become, I consider to be an Apollo 13 type of project that has gone on for a very long time. One of the things that is going on is essentially you have the most significant laboratory of learning. Yes, the consequences are dramatic and horrible from the soil spill, but there is a lot to be learned from what has happened with respect to the ongoing efforts at containment, what's worked, what's failed, et cetera. And so as a collective responsibility of Interior, of the Congress, of the industry, we need to make sure that those lessons are being learned and then applied to the future. And your focus on oil spill response capability is indeed a very high priority.